Welcome in, everyone, to the Larsonland podcast. I'm your host, Sawyer Hill, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Dylan Bradshaw. We come in here every single week and talk about all things involving the 2021 NASCAR Cup Series champion, Young Money Kyle Larson. Kyle Larson made a surprise appearance at the Turkey Night Grand Prix out in Ventura over the weekend, but before we get to that, we have a huge guest on today's show. Welcome in Blaine Anderson, the front tire changer on the HendrickCars.com number 5 car in the NASCAR Cup Series. Blaine, thanks so much for coming on. First and foremost, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, guys. I'm so happy to be on here. I came across you guys, a couple weeks ago, and I like what you're doing, and we reached out and connected and figured we'd get on here and give you a little inside scoop of maybe what goes on inside the team, but maybe I can't give you too much. I don't know. We'll see.
No secrets.
Yeah.
So, go ahead,
Yeah,
Dylan.
go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just kind of want to get started on it, kind of take you through step by step. How'd you get started in motorsports? We'll start there. I kind of noticed a lot of pit crew guys, they seem to be former athletes. Noticed that you actually played for Alabama football. Kind of not motorsports related, but I kind of want to ask you about your experience there, the atmosphere, and playing for a program like that.
Yeah, so my journey began at Alabama back in 2014 when I walked on the football team. And I did that for 3 seasons, was in 2 national championship games. And just being in a huge program like that in a huge school, I mean, there's so many opportunities and you meet so many people. And the way I got into NASCAR was, because of playing football there. Basically, all the coaches, all the pit crew coaches, each team has all your pit crews and then you have your coaches. And, each race, these coaches go out and they kind of recruit athletes. Usually it's like the closest school to the track, it makes it easy for them. But Talladega is not too far from Tuscaloosa. And so that's how I got my contact. And with all the teams in Charlotte and me being from Charlotte, I was like, heck, man, I'll try this out. I didn't know anything about NASCAR. I didn't know anything about motorsports. My background was completely blind to everything. And that's kind of the way they like it. They can teach you the ropes. They can, you being a new guy and not sure about motorsports or anything that really goes on in a car. They're just like, this is like the perfect whiteboard. We're going to teach you and just do our best to, just teach you everything there is. But they want you to play fast, not overthink. So if you know too much, it kind of could hurt you. So there's a little bit of like philosophy to that.
So is it just like NASCAR in general, or each team kind of comes and they scout everyone and kind of become a prospect for those teams?
Yeah, so they'll get like a group of guys in the spring, and I'm not sure how everyone else does it, but this is how Hendrick did it. It was about 40 guys, and within those like 30 to 40 guys, you try you out like a combine, kind of like an NFL combine. They put you through a bunch of drills and tests, and out of those 30 to 40, they bring about 8 to 12 back. And out of those 8 to 12, it's kind of like a mini camp. It's like a 3-day thing. They put you in a hotel. That's when you actually learn how to pit a race car. And so I got asked to come back for that group of 12. And out of that group of 12, they only took 4 of us, 4 to 5. Usually they put a whole team together, but depending on roster situations and stuff like that, sometimes it may be one guy, sometimes it may be a whole squad. So in my case, it was 4 guys, and that was back in the spring of 2018.
Sweet.
Gotcha.
So kind of take us through like that, like learning process, like when you first get to Hendrick Motorsports or to a team. Like, do you get like thrown in? You're like pitting like in races like right away, or is it like you kind of have like a year or so to practice? What is that like?
So when they brought the group of us in, they brought us in the spring, and they finally hired us in September. September is towards the end of the season. I'm pretty sure that's playoffs, yeah. And you come in September, we get straight to practicing, and literally like 4 weeks of practicing. My first race ever was Martinsville of 2018, and it was a truck series race. And that was one of the funniest races because I didn't know anything. You got high brake wear track. And I've got on these little thin gloves, and no one told me to put on thick gloves. And I'm sitting there. I had a hanger. I had a lug nut still stuck to the wheel, and I'm sitting there pulling it. I burned my finger all to pieces, and it was terrible. But it was a good learning experience. So you have those growing pains, like when you get in there and you get thrown into the fire like that. Like there's so many things that you have to adapt to and figure out yourself. Like someone's not there every step of the way to like teach every little thing. Like we have a great organization; they do a great job of teaching us, but the little stuff like that, it's kind of fun to figure out yourself and kind of learn the hard way.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yes. So
we
you
don't see
kind of
like
stepped in so you stepped in like in the middle of the season this year, right, for Kyle Larson's team, but where was like your like take us through I guess like the teams you have pitted over the past couple of years.
Oh man, so I started doing truck series, and I believe I did the last two Xfinity races of the 2018 season with JD Motorsports. And then 2019, I pitted all JD Motorsports for Xfinity all year. I may have pitted one JRM car. I can't remember. It was like such a big deal when you first start off in the Xfinity series if you pit a JRM car,
Right?
Because you're not going to pit a Hendrick car. So JRM for new guys is like pitting for a Hendrick car for us. And so that was a big deal. I believe I did one race. I filled in for somebody. I probably did terrible, but and then 2019 and 2018, or I'm sorry, 2019, 2020, 2021, there was the one lug rumor. So that kind of was like spooking everybody. And then all of last year, towards the off season, is when everyone started practicing one lug. And that's kind of where I started to make a name for myself. 5 lug nut is such a hard thing to do as a changer. It takes forever to get good. And not that I was struggling or I was bad. I was year 3 or 4, and I still need another year or 2 to become elite. And with this whole one lug thing, it was a clean slate for everybody. So that's kind of where I made a name for myself. And then like halfway through the season this year, I had an opportunity where I'm sure you guys are aware with the loose wheel in Sonoma.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of competed all week against someone else for that spot. And I think it was Nashville was a falling race. Yeah, Nashville. And kind of just never left that seat, So this is crazy about our sport is you have an opportunity like that, like a slim window, and you just got to capitalize. And that's kind of what us backup guys at the time keep our fingers crossed for. And I think it was 4 weeks after I had filled in. So when the front changer on the 5 was suspended and he came back is when they actually named me the full-time starter for the 5. So that was a big deal. That's kind of been my story. I pitted every JRM car this year. I did the 1, the 8. I was mainly on the 7. I did the 9. I did the 17 when Kyle ran it, and I believe it was there was another one. It was like 5 or 6 different JRM cars on the Saturday. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna ask that. So does every Cup guy at Hendrick? So do they all pit for like a JRM guy? Because I was curious because I mean they're doing the 5 lug setup and then going straight to Cup to the single lug. So like, do you still practice on the 5 lug setup and also the single lug?
Occasionally we'll practice 5 lug, but we're so like the big money, the big ticket is obviously the Sunday race. So like that is our main focus. Very rarely would we do 5 lug nut practice. I mean, to answer your other question, like all the house cars, they pit with each other on Saturdays. My role and the reason I pitted all the JRM cars was, I guess you could say I'm like a fill-in guy as for a 5 lug, just because that is not something that I guess was like had become elite at yet. So like whenever it was someone needed to be filled in, that was kind of my role. But as far as like the 1 lug deal, like I'm on the 5. So
Sweet. So I guess like when you're up on the wall, like Kyle's getting ready to come in, like walk us through like your mindset that like a whole pit stop from start to finish, like is either side of the car, like the right side or the left side, like is either side harder to change? Like does it matter if you're left-handed or right-handed? Like little things like that, does it play a factor into anything in the pit stop?
Yeah, to answer your right-handed, left-handed thing, I kind of figured out in the off season that going left-handed, there was a little bit more of an advantage there. And being naturally right-handed and pitting right-handed with the 5 lug, It's kind of weird to go from right-handed to left-handed on Sundays, but there is an advantage to it, and so I continue to do that. But having Kyle and like pitting for a good team with the five guys, seeing Kyle coming down pit road 1 is something like previous to that, it's something I really didn't have much experience with. And also I'm filling in for the 2021 championship team. Like I had to learn quick. Like I had to nut up quick, like I had to like figure it out. And I can say that I'm proud of what I've been able to accomplish as far as like mindset and like, not getting too stressed out and not letting the anxiety levels get high. Cause it's crazy when you see him coming down first on pit road and there's 39 other cars behind him, and if he doesn't leave first, it's like, was it my fault? Did I do something wrong? I don't know. But as far as getting to the right side of the car, it's just taking one step at a time. You got to engage your gun to the lug nut, and you got to pull the trigger, and then you got to get a clean tire pull, then you got to roll it to the wall, then you got to tighten it, and you got to run around and literally do the same thing on the left side. If you get out of sync, the worst thing you can do is rush through what you have to finish. Because if you do that, then you're just going to screw yourself for the next step. And it's just a process of a checklist. I mean, we always say it's a checklist. Like you just check off the first thing to be able to do the second thing. You can't get to the second step without finishing the first step, so don't rush.
So I was thinking about this earlier before me and Dylan were talking about it. We're pretty big Baltimore Ravens fans, and we always after Justin Tucker, after he kicks one of those crazy game-winning field goals, he always talks about the 1.3 seconds between the snap, the kick, and the hold on those field goals. The snap needs to be good, the laces need to be lined up at the right angle, and he kind of says the ball kicks itself to an extent at that point. I feel like it's kind of a pit crew, a pit stop, that 10-second stop, I guess now in a Cup Series single lug stop. Can you relate that a little bit to a field goal in an NFL game?
Yeah, no, that's a great analogy actually. I'm sure to Justin it feels like slow motion. To us, I know it feels like slow motion. You don't want it to feel fast, because if you feel like it's fast and like maybe you forget to tighten the lug fully, or you step on your hose running around because you're rushing your run around or something like that. Like, it is so crazy, man, to get out there and try to play as fast as you can, but to tell your mind to go as slow as it can, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So, that's a great analogy, because I guess with a field goal, like, you got to have the perfect snap and hold, and like the wind and everything's got to be good and stuff. But like the crazy thing about a pit stop is, like, Kyle might go long and you might have to adjust, or he might go short and you might have to adjust to that. Or if there's damage and you can't get your tire out because, there's damage on the fender or something, you got to be able to adjust and not let it like shake you up. You know what I mean? So there's so much that goes into the mental aspect of a pit stop, and you just got to really, like, the good guys don't get like bent out of shape.
Right. So, how do you feel with the single lug transition? Because you go through your whole training experience doing 5 lug. You said you're not elite at it yet, but you're still learning. And then it's just clean slate. You just got to, everyone's doing a single lug. Everyone's got to relearn it. So, I mean, which one would you prefer? I mean, you had training with the 5. Would you prefer that over single?
Well, I always joke about this because the guys at the shop like to give me a hard time. Like, I never was the best 5 lug changer. So I always say this whole 1 lug transition basically saved my pit crew career. So I'm going to have to go with 1 lug for sure.
We might, about the right-handed left-handed thing, we might have to actually edit that out of the podcast. I don't know. Is that something that's just you figured out, or is like you think other guys are doing that type of thing too? Because I don't want anybody to slow down our pit stops on the 5 car.
There's several guys on pit road that are naturally right-handed that do left-handed on purpose. I think it's becoming more of a thing. NASCAR is such a monkey see, monkey do sport. Like, I'm sure a lot of guys this offseason are going to transition into left-handed because they see and they know the advantage is there. It's just the matter of fact of like figuring it out.
I think
you guys can keep that. That's fine. That's no deep dark secret.
So does Hendrick experiment with like the different ways like the guys run around the car and stuff like that too? Like does every team pretty much do a stop the same way? Because I'm pretty sure I saw like I don't know if it was a JGR team or a 2311 or something. I think I saw like they would run around they'd all go around the back of the car or something like that.
Yeah, there was a big question mark at the beginning of the year with the stops being faster. If like, can you manipulate the choreography or not? Like, and we decided as an organization that we're gonna stick to the normal 5 lug choreography. And I believe JGR was like super set on doing their choreography where the right front changer becomes their left rear changer and their right rear changer becomes their left front changer. Um, the logic behind that makes sense, but it's such a if there's one little mistake in that stop become you might as well throw it out the window. And I guess we just decided as an organization that we weren't going to try that or do that.
Gotcha.
So like, I mean, what's your opinion? I mean, you mentioned you came in from Sonoma after the suspensions. Your first race was Nashville following that race. What's your opinion on the penalty that NASCAR gives? Because I mean, 4 race suspension for a crew chief, and then I mean, they even suspend guys that aren't even at fault for the loose wheel per se. So what's your thoughts on like the suspension?
And
Yeah, so
sorry to interrupt, but like kind of to like piggyback like off of that, I almost feel like that rule or suspension was based off of the 5 lug stops where teams were intentionally tightening only 3 lugs. Now, obviously, you want to tighten that 1 lug. Nobody's doing that on purpose, not trying to tighten it.
yeah, I remember I was actually on the Corey. I was my so when before I was on the 5, I was on the 7. I was on Corey LaJoy's car. Our 2 backup teams do the 7 and 77 at Hendrick. And I don't know if you guys remember back in Phoenix in the spring on the 7 when Corey had a loose wheel, he ran into the wall and his wheel came off. I was the front changer that got suspended for
Oh,
that
wow.
race. And I remember Corey getting on his podcast or tweeting maybe that next week or something. Maybe it was an interview. I can't remember. And he made a good point. He said something about how it's silly that this rule that was based off of a 5 lug nut deal is now part of this 1 lug deal because, like you said, there was an advantage to hitting 3 lug nuts and risking maybe the wheel being tight to gain spots on pit road. There is no advantage to a loose wheel anymore. So
Right.
maybe they realize all the loose wheels are happening and they're like, oh man, that's $100,000 check there. And, and they just started stacking up. So maybe NASCAR, I don't know if they're going to change that rule. I think they should come down on like, how intense the suspension is. And, I don't really know about the fines per se, but 4 week suspension for one little loose wheel. I mean, we're talking about like tenths of a second of a difference between that thing being tight and not. And so it's such like a in the moment decision. Like 4 weeks is a long time.
And we even saw like times this year where I think like Cliff would I don't know what races it was specifically, but like you guys like came back down pit road to check and just make sure because you don't want that suspension. It's so altering, especially in the playoffs where if you lose Cliff, I mean he's the leader of the team. Like you can't have that for 2 more races.
Yeah, I remember it was Darlington in the playoffs, and we had an issue on the left side. I can't remember if the car wasn't high enough, and when it dropped, it didn't feel like it was loose. And I don't want to be the guy that doesn't say anything, and then it goes. Kyle goes out there and smacks the wall, and the tire comes off.
Right.
And so, if there's any instance of any question of whether or not it's tight, we wear those GoPros on our helmet, and we'll check those super quick. And if we don't have time to check them, or if we do check them, and we see that, we paint the sockets on our guns. And so if we don't see the socket stop, we have to do the right thing and tell Cliff or whoever whatever team you're on, the crew chief that, hey, I don't feel comfortable with this. And then let him be the one that makes the decision. So yeah, when we were in Darlington, the camera wasn't working for some reason. And I was sweating bullets because it's a playoff race. And I'm like, Cliff, like, I don't know, man. And so we came down and checked, and it was tight. And that was just one of those things where it's better be safe than sorry.
Yeah, I definitely see that. What is it like working with Cliff? I mean, like everybody always talks about like in the media about like his motivational speeches and all that stuff. Like, have you been in on those speeches, and what is it like?
Oh yeah, no, he's I told Cliff this personally. Being at Alabama and seeing Saban, there's so much similarity there as far as like intensity and like do your job, and there's I don't want to cuss on the podcast, but like
Hey, it's fine.
um like just every moment needs to be taken serious. Like you got to do your job, and his motivational speeches before the race he just tries to get everyone in the right mindset and focus, and we're here to do our job and win a championship. And he comes from the Chad Canal Street, so you can only imagine how serious he is. So
yeah,
we don't see like too much coverage, or at least around the Pickers. I mean, we might get a clip here and there, but I mean, a lot of people don't really know what goes on the week to week basis. Kind of take us through the week leading up to the race day and what happens with the teams on the race day, everything you do.
yeah, so we'll get back super late Sunday night, and they give us Monday completely off. No meetings, no workouts, no practice. But they leave the pit pad open, or I'm sorry, they leave the weight room open. If you have an injury or if you need to rehab or if you want to come work out. So Mondays are optional. I usually get home Sunday night, and I usually don't set an alarm Monday and just kind of let my body recover. And then whenever I get up, I may go work out or do yoga or stretch. And Tuesday is when you start prepping for the next weekend. So Tuesday is you got your meetings in the morning, and it's basically like a film review. You watch all the angles of the pit stop. You go over what happened, what went wrong, what we can do better next time. And then we'll watch film for the next track. So we'll watch film from the previous weekend, and then we'll watch film from like if it was Martinsville and we were watching that, we would watch it on Tuesday. Wednesday, we would watch a previous race from Phoenix getting ready for that weekend, if that makes sense. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, we'll work out and do practices. So it's kind of like 3 days during the week is like half day.
right.
And then you got your Mondays and Fridays off.
So is there anything like special you do on race day, like as far as things the team has to do to prepare? Like, is it completely different, things you have to do?
Race day is like its own. It's not even close to how we do like our weekday stuff. Like we'll show up to the track, and like everyone's got a certain job to do, and it usually leads up until race time. So as far as changers, like we got to run tires and get them to the pit box and clean them and prep them and make sure every single pinhole in the back of the wheel is clean and it's not going to get stuck on the drive pin. So when we do a pit stop, it doesn't get stuck, So there's so many little things. We got to set up the pit box. We have a team meeting usually about an hour and a half before the race. Yeah, I mean, you're so busy on race day, you really don't have time to think or do anything other than kind of focus on what you got to do right then and there.
So kind of switching gears a little bit. So what's your relationship like with Kyle? Like, do you talk to Kyle? Like, how often you talk to him, and like, what is it like working with him in general?
Yeah, so obviously I wasn't on the team when he won the championship, and you see him get all the glory, and you see like all the stuff coverage he gets on TV and stuff. I remember when I first walked in the team meeting and I saw him, like, oh shit, that's Kyle Larson. Like a little starstruck car, and that was real quick. And then he's super nice dude. Like he's super humble. He's super low key. I don't see him much on race day just because he's doing so much PR stuff, and I'm taking care of the stuff I have to. Really, the only time I see him is that meeting, which is an hour and a half before the race, and we kind of just go over the game plan, fuel strategy, tire wear, stuff like that, and then he's on his way. And but he's such a nice dude. Like usually, some drivers kind of have like this asterisk above them about they're cocky or they're too good. Like Kyle is not that way. He's one of the most humble, likable drivers I've ever pitted for.
No, I think definitely I see that because definitely me and Dylan, we've had some experiences talking to Kyle like at dirt tracks and stuff like that, and it's all been like that's how it's been with him. Like he'll take all the time to talk to every single fan. he said he's like seen our stuff on Larsonland as well. So pretty
Sweet.
cool. Yeah.
Sounds like you need to get him on here as your next guest.
I know we might need your help a little bit, bit to make that happen. But do you watch any of Kyle's dirt track stuff at all?
I didn't, but I'm starting to get into it. Actually, the dirt stuff I've been following through you guys. Cliff always talks about his dirt racing, like how good he is and like all the lines he can find. And I'm still like kind of figuring out the whole racing world stuff. So like the stock car racing is, obviously my main priority, but I think dirt racing is so badass. Like I would love to get more into it and maybe even like figure out how to get in one. Like I know that's a stretch, but like I would love to just mess around with it. I think it's so cool and it's something I'm starting to get into. So it's fun to learn about.
Well, I'm sure you got a pretty good contact there in the team if you want to know anything about it. I mean,
yeah.
Kyle's the guy, but yeah, I mean, I was talking to I think it's kind of cool. Like Cliff follows a lot of Kyle's stuff, like the dirt stuff too. I was at Dover last year in the spring, and I had a hot pass that day, and I was talking to Cliff for a minute, like in passing, and he was saying how he was watching the race from like the night before. I think Kyle was at Bristol at the dirt there in a late model, and then he flew back to Dover for practice and qualifying. I mean, it's just like he's crazy.
Yeah, I don't think there's any other driver out there that does what he does as far as all the races and I don't know, like different series, I guess. I remember like our PR guy, he'll show up to the track and he'll say that Kyle just flew back from California and we'll be in Atlanta or something. And you're like, holy smokes, this dude is like all over the place. He loves it. He's such a racer. And it's good to know that like you're pitting for a dude who just absolutely is diehard, loves getting in the car, strapping the seatbelt on and just, foot to the floor, like all gas, man. Like I love that. I love that he's all about it.
Yeah, I think that's why we like covering Kyle's stuff so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. I think one race, I can't think of what NASCAR race it was. He won the pole, and he had to he had to rush back. I think it was the Knoxville sprint race, and he had to like hop on a helicopter or something like really quick. He had like no time. He missed like the meetings for the dirt race. It's just nonstop.
He's all about it, man. I love it, man. He's so good at everything he gets in. It's crazy to see, and it's a blessing to be able to like first be on a team like this. It's awesome.
Yeah, maybe while he's on baby watch, maybe you'll have to get him to get on the pod because I know he hasn't been running a lot of the dirt stuff recently because Caitlin's pregnant and everything. But Dylan, did you have any other questions?
That should pretty much wrap it up. I appreciate you coming on and answering, kind of giving us an insight on everything. Because, like I said, I mean, there's not too much coverage around the pit guys and what they do. So it's nice to get some info about it.
Yeah, and if you guys in the future ever want me back on, or I can reach out to any other pit crew guys or any of the road crew guys, or I'll do my best with Kyle and Cliff, but I can't promise anything.
They're Hollywood.
Yeah.
All right, Blaine. Thanks so much for coming on, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
All right, Dylan, now let's talk a little bit about Kyle Larson's surprise appearance at the Turkey Night Grand Prix out at the Ventura Raceway in California on Saturday night. I was really starting to think that Kyle was done for the season. I thought he was shutting it down. He's on baby watch. Caitlin was nice enough to, as Kyle said in an interview, let him out for 24 hours, and he came out of the gates quick. He was sixth quick in hot laps in the all black CB Industries 87 car, but qualifying it was the track was treacherous, Dylan. It was rough, and Kyle Larson spun on his first lap, ended up 37th out of 58 cars in qualifying, and kind of set himself up for a long night.
Yeah, it was kind of unexpected. We saw a lot of people kind of posting stuff that it was confirmed on Ventura's website that like him and Christopher Bell would be there. But I mean, like you said, he's having the baby soon, so he's kind of going down on the racing. Got to be on baby watch, as you said. But he said he had some glasses of wine on Thanksgiving. He was watching some racing, and he decided to come and race. And luckily, Chad Bode had that car accessible for him, but. Like you said, tough in qualifying. He spun out. He went into I think it was qualifier number 3, started 9th, and then he finished 4th in that. that put him to the feature. Um, he started, I think it was 22nd in the feature, so a lot of ground to cover, but it's a lot of laps. There was a lot of cautions in that one.
Oh
It was
yeah.
definitely set for a long one. We were talking about like over and under when this race would end. I missed that one severely. I think you said over 1:30 in the morning, so
Yeah.
missed that one severely, but it turned out to be a pretty good race.
Yeah, I think you said 12:45 a.m.
Yeah.
Eastern time, and I called 1:30. I said it's gonna be after 1:30 a.m. Eastern, and sure enough, man, they drug that thing out, and it it took a while to get that one in. But 98 laps, like you said, caution laps counting in the first half of that race. Kyle was really methodical about his working his way up through that pack. I mean, he you could tell that he ran that race a couple times before. I mean, we posted the stats on social media during the race night, and Kyle's never finished worse than fourth at Turkey Night. And so starting 22nd, we were like, maybe Kyle's top four streak comes to an end tonight in his I think it was his ninth, or I think it was actually his 10th Turkey Night Grand Prix, and he was smart about it, worked his way up through there until right at the end, man, a little controversy with Kevin Thomas Jr. for that second spot. But I don't really think Kyle was doing anything that other guys weren't doing out there. I mean, everybody was rough. The track was rough. We saw, I mean, I think it was Thorson and Grant going for the lead late in the race. They were throwing crazy moves, off on two wheels, four wheels off the ground. I mean, it was a crazy race.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, he definitely forced the car in there with KTJ. I mean, he sent it inside. They kind of came out. They wheel bumped a little bit. Yeah, that's just crazy. But he had to try to get those spots. Justin Grant, he was really quick. I don't think anyone was really catching him. I mean, the earlier in the race, I mean, you had your guys like Kofoid was really quick until he got kind of sent back, and I mean, it seemed like all the leaders were kind of like wrecking out. I was kind of worried once Kyle got up there. I was like, I hope he doesn't start leading the race and something bad happens. But came in with a second place finish, and who knows? We might see him once again this year. Probably not. There is some races like I think in December that he could run, but I mean with Caitlin having the baby, it's probably unlikely. But nice to see that surprise visit, get some racing. Haven't seen it in a while.
Absolutely, man. I know I was itching for something, man. When I saw that picture come out on USAC's Twitter, I was ready to go. I mean, it had been like almost a month. It hadn't even been a month, but it felt like it had been 2 months since Kyle ran a race, and I'm glad that we got maybe the last one in for the season. But I think that's pretty much everything we had to talk about in today's podcast. We really, again, want to thank Blaine a ton for coming on. It was really nice of him to come on here. He actually reached out to us and wanted to come on, so super cool having some insight from within the team. And as always, everybody, I mean, leave a comment if you want to see some sort of other guest. Like I mean, he might be able to. I mean, I know we want Kyle to get on the podcast eventually, but anybody else, I mean, we can try and get some other guests on the podcast. So leave a comment on YouTube if you want to see somebody else.
Yeah, it definitely makes it better. I mean, people watching us just talk back and forth each week. It's nice to get someone in racing, kind of give some insight, because at the end of the day, we're just fans. We technically don't really know what we're talking about when it comes to the actual, what everything happens on race day, the actual racing. So it's nice to see someone like Blaine come in. A pit crew member, he sees it all, he does it all. So getting his insight, it's definitely valuable, and it helps us kind of understand everything that goes on a race.
All right, thanks, Dylan, for a great season here on the podcast. 37 episodes during the 2022 season. I know we're already getting things ready for 2023 and picking right back up I think we'll be coming on here the second week of January for our first episode of 2023 to discuss all of the action at the Wild West Shootout there in Vado, where Kyle Larson will be running the Rumley 6 late model. Last show of 2022, so barring any surprise news, we want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And if you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to like this video and subscribe. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please follow our podcast so you don't miss a thing. Hope everyone has a great rest of the year, and we will see you in the next episode.